Hi, welcome to Directions. I'm Jay West, your host, and today I'm going solo. I don't have a guest, but that's okay because I want to talk about a directional change in my life that has been an effect now for roughly 15 years, and I'm still doing it. And that is meeting with, praying with, and encouraging political leaders, public servants, at the local, state, national level in both parties, Republican and Democrat. And so I'm going to give you a little history and some of the things I do. And I'm doing this because I'm thinking there are people out there who are watching who would like to pray with their political leaders in their village, in their town, in their city, in their state, maybe in the nation. And they don't really know how to do it. They pray for their homes or maybe from their business, but how do they do it in person? And so I'm going to share some insights that I picked up over the years, and perhaps that'll be helpful to you as well. This started basically kind of with a sequential transition, if you will. 2007 or so, I was upgraded on an airplane flying from Omaha to Minneapolis, then Minneapolis to Fort Lauderdale, and I was upgraded and sat next to a man in first class whom I got acquainted with. His name is Ray, and Ray and I are friends to this day. I just literally talked to him 2 days ago on the phone, and we just hit it off that day and became friends and went out for dinner in Fort Lauderdale and so on. And Ray is the chairman of the board of directors for a minister named Ed Savoso. Ed is a early pioneer in revival out of Argentina, was raised in Argentina, has a ministry in California, dealing with transforming cities primarily, but also geographical areas, sometimes states, sometimes small countries, and so on. And so through the my initial acquaintance and developing friendship with Ray, he invited me to go to a transformation conference in Honolulu, Hawaii, of which he was willing to pay my whole way. And it was one of those times where I said, "Thank you, Jesus." And so I got to go to Hawaii for free, and I attended the conference and met Ed Savoso and became friends with him, and went again the next year and took my son and began to learn about transforming cities. And it was like God was setting me up, because then a couple years after that, I was contacted by a ministry leader out of Sacramento named Sammy Rodriguez, and he heads up one of the largest Hispanic networks in the nation, has a network of churches up and down the coast in California, but is also influential in Congress, in the White House, is on CNN, Fox, and so on. And through his organization, I was contacted and asked to be the Nebraska representative for something called the United States Prayer Council. And I was like, what is that? And I was told, well, we have a representative in each state, and you pray with political leaders. Would you like to do it? And I said, yeah, I can do it, but I only knew two political leaders at the time. And they said, we'll start with those and see where God takes it. So the ones I knew here in town, one was a Republican, one was a Democrat. One was white, one was black, and they were both friends. And so I began with them. And one was a former mayor, and one became the mayor here, and I will get into that a little bit later. And I began branching out and meeting with all sorts of people. Now, before I go into some of those meetings, I want to read a scripture passage that talks about this. 1 Timothy chapter 2, starting at verse 1. I urge you, first of all, to pray for all people. Ask God to help them, intercede on their behalf, and give thanks for them. Pray this way for kings and all who are in authority, so that we can live peaceful and quiet lives marked by godliness and dignity. This is good and pleases God, our Savior, who wants everyone to be saved and to understand the truth. Some translation says, I would that you would lift up holy hands without wrath or doubt and pray for political leaders, those in authority, kings, presidents, and so on. And so the Bible gives us a mandate to pray for those who are in authority, those who lead in the public servant realm. And public servant is not just an elected official. It can be an appointed official. It can be a fire chief, a police chief, It can be a captain in a police department. It could be a lot of different things. And so I began to do that, to pray. And locally, it was slow at first. Nobody knew who I was. And I also took a lot of criticism. It was interesting when I started, as it worked up, and I started praying with the governors here in Nebraska. I prayed with 4 different governors over a longer period of time. I began to take some criticism from people saying, well, who do you think you are? You don't pastor a big church. You don't have a big ministry. Who do you think you are going out and praying with political leaders? I'm like, I didn't ask for this job. It came to me. I didn't even know it existed. I'm just trying to serve, and I don't get any pay from it. I don't get any notoriety. I don't get any speaking engagements. It's something that I volunteer for. And over time, those attitudes changed, and now I've been doing it 15 years. A lot of things have happened, and we'll get into that. So I began to pray for just, the mayors of our suburbs, excuse me, and the police chiefs, and the fire chiefs. One of those was the Papillion fire chief. He's been a guest on this show, Bill Bowes, and others, and county commissioners, and railroad commissioners, and judges, and, the list goes on, all the public servants. And with each one, I built trust and confidence, and I had credibility. And they would share with their friends. Sometimes they would post on social media. I remember the first time I prayed for one of the mayors in Bellevue. Excuse me, Rusty Hike. Rusty just posted on Facebook that this guy came in named Jay West and prayed for him, and how blessed he was to have that, have that encounter with me. And so I began to meet, pray, encourage, talk, share. And I'm just going to tell you up front, even with the governors, senators, congressmen, lieutenant governors, federal judges, state Supreme Court justices. I prayed with state Supreme Court Justice of Alabama, became a close personal friend. Some of the Supreme Court justices in Indiana. It's branched out. The lieutenant governor of Hawaii called me one day. People call me now and ask for prayer because the word is out there that I'm trustworthy. I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying credibility is really, really important. And confidentiality. That is so critical. I never share what the topics were that I prayed with the people unless I have permission from them to do that. And I will share some of them today because I have permission, and it's in hindsight, it's already happened. The other thing I don't do is I don't come in and address issues. In other words, I don't come into a congressman or a senator and say, why did you vote this way? Why didn't you vote this way? What prompted you to write that bill? I don't bring up things. If they bring it up, I'm happy to discuss it and share it and pray with them. But I don't bring it up. My job is simply to encourage them, to bless them, to honor them. I was sharing with somebody down in Texas on the way here about honoring political leaders. It's become in our culture to refer to political leaders just by their last name. Biden, Bush, Trump, so on the list goes, Obama. And it's like, wait a minute, nobody calls me West. Nobody's called me West since 7th grade PE, all right? It's like, why do we do this? We've lost the honor, then the respect. I don't call my doctor by his last name. I call him Dr. So-and-so. I was at my dentist yesterday, Dr. Week. I don't call him Week. But we do that with political leaders. I think it's out of balance. It needs to change. That's my personal opinion. But it's my show today, and I'm okay with sharing that because I believe it's biblical and I believe it's godly. So we want to have trust, credibility, confidentiality, and also want to be genuine. What happens is a lot of these leaders give me their cell numbers, and I carry them on this phone. Nobody ever sees these numbers. When I've changed phones, I take a lot of effort to get the numbers out of the phone in case somebody at the phone company changes it and sees it. And I'll re-input it later. I'm really cautious. It's really important because I'm building a reputation, and I want it to be known that I can be trusted, and that if they have deep prayer or deep personal needs, and some of these political leaders share things beyond the scope and the realm of their influence. They talk about family life, married life, issues with kids, grandkids, neighbors, constituents, and so on it goes. And so it's important for me to offer to them a credible, godly approach with influence that they can trust. A number of these political leaders have come to me and said, you have permission to interrupt my schedule anytime if you have a scripture verse for me, or you have a prophetic word, or you just feel like praying, you can call me. Simultaneously, they have permission to call me too, and have done it. I've been on vacation. I've gotten off airplanes, and there's a call waiting, and I got to call them right back. It doesn't matter their influence. They can be a mayor or a governor, or even a vice president. They have the ability to contact me, and I will do my very best to get back in touch with them as fast as I can. But again, don't deal with the issues. And don't make party, Republican, Democrat, an issue. If you're a Republican, don't try to persuade and tell them they're wrong. If you're a Democrat, don't try to tell them they're wrong. Just go in with a humble spirit, with kindness and gentleness, and become a friend. Become a friend. You know, social media shreds them when they post on social media. You know, they'll get some likes and they'll get some good comments, but they get some just horrible stuff written about them. And it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat or independent, I'll write something positive. If I see it, I'll write something positive. And then I get shredded, but I don't care. I can handle it. Who cares? I was like, I'm not going to argue with somebody I've never met. I don't know who they are. So it's kind of ridiculous. That's my approach. Anyway, I pray and encourage. I remember I was praying with it happened to be a Democrat congressman. I was praying right here in Omaha. So he's from Nebraska. And I usually pray with my eyes open for just about everything. And he was like this, head bowed, eyes closed. And I prayed something, kind of like a word of knowledge. In other words, had information into the prayer that I wasn't privy to other than through God. And his eyes flew open. He grabbed my hands really fast and said, "How did you know that?" I said, "I didn't know it, but you just confirmed it." And from that moment on, we became pretty good friends. Every time he would see me in downtown, and I don't mean that party-wise, I just mean that I didn't know him prior to that meeting. And we became friends. And he would approach me, he says, "God telling you anything about me? What can I learn about the Lord? What can I learn about the Bible from you, Jay?" And so take these opportunities to have influence. I remember I met with the Supreme Court Justice in Alabama at the time, and I had a 4-hour meeting with him. And he quoted to me the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, long passages out of the Bible, Ezekiel and Isaiah. And I remember leaving that meeting thinking, man, this guy's on fire for God. He's a Supreme Court Justice in Alabama. I was like, and I remember saying, he's hot and I'm not. And I didn't mean like I'm not like, full of ice or something, but just he's going after God. Met another similar judge a federal judge down in Texas, down in the Valley of Texas. We're still friends to this day. He's no longer, he's retired. And more recently, I met a judge who was in Oregon and who is now the special counsel to the Attorney General of the United States. And he and I are forging a friendship. And we talk almost every week. We met him back in March of this year. And we've just quickly become friends and pray and offer things. And he's been appointed to this realm. He was a judge. He's been appointed as a special counsel to the Attorney General of the United States. That's a pretty, and he gave us a private tour of the Justice Department and just saw all sorts of amazing things. And we weren't trying to become friends to get a tour of the Justice Department. We were becoming friends to basically come alongside of him, link arms, if you will. And I say him, there's lots of female political leaders too. Some of the state senators, one of them was the previous Bellevue mayor, and her name's Rita, and she became a congressional leader for the state, and she and I are good friends, and she was so kind and supportive of me when my previous wife passed away, and I ministered to her, and she's going through some hard stuff, and whatever, people go through stuff. Doesn't matter what your title is. Doesn't matter who you are. You're going to go through some stuff. And it's always nice to have somebody there who kind of understands and wants to help and be a blessing, and so on. I remember I was trying to meet, I'll just be real honest here, because he's no longer in office. He's a senator here and for Nebraska. And I was trying to meet him, and I couldn't meet him. I called his office, he wasn't available, or it just didn't work out. And I was trying really, really hard to meet him. And I bumped into him in the restroom at the airport. And we're washing our hands, and he's right there, and I'm going, okay, what do I do now? My hands are all wet. But I just said, hey, I've been trying to meet you, and I introduced myself, and we dried our hands, and we went out, and we talked, and we ended up sitting right next to each other on the airplane all the way to D.C. And it just opened up the door to meet him and to be with him. And then I met a state representative in Iowa at a department store in Council Bluffs, and this man is very unusual. He writes bills for children that are not born yet, who are going to inherit a trust when they're born. And anyway, he wanted to meet this state senator, and the state senator wanted to meet them, and I just was able to help forge that relationship, and they got together. It was a God thing. It was a God thing for both of those encounters to happen. One in the bathroom at the airport, and one at a department store. God's in it. And so it's those kinds of things that God begins working and doing, and then you have fun sharing the testimony about it. And I remember the Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii called me one day on the phone. He said, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I just need prayer. I've heard about you. I go, you heard about me in Hawaii? Well, he heard about me because I went to that conference with Ed Savoso, Transformation. Somehow he heard about me there. But those are the encounters I like. I mean, I like them all, don't get me wrong. But those are the ones that I like where God's just doing something fun and interesting and so on. One of my favorite ones is, and I'll say his name in this case because we're close personal friends, and everybody who knows me knows I'm friends with him, Sam Brownback. So I met Sam when he ran for president in 2007, and he was running against the John McCain group and the Obama group, President Obama group, became President Obama group, and so he ended up riding the bus with Senator John McCain, who didn't get elected, and Barack Obama got elected and became president, and so on. We all know that story. And then I lost track of Sam for about 5 or 6 years, and when I would drive to Kansas, I would ask for an appointment with him. And I began to get little appointments, and I would stop at the Capitol and have a 15-minute meeting or a 10-minute meeting or a 20-minute meeting. And this began to expand. We began to have friendship. And he asked me to come down and spend the day with him on the election day of his second term. And I won't go into the whole story, but something significant happened that day, and we just really bonded. We became friends that day. And we became such good friends that I've stayed in his home in D.C. and in Topeka. I'm actually going to be at his place in just a couple weeks. We're going to have some time together again. And he was one of the groomsmen in my recent wedding to Rebecca. He was part of our wedding group all the way up. So that's how close of friends we've become. And I'll tell you this quick story. It was in June of 2019. Family and I, we were scheduled to go in and meet with the vice president in the West Wing, and there's a different name for that building. It escapes me right now, but it's part of the West Wing. And when we got there, we had all our paperwork. I got our paperwork here. We had all our paperwork in order, but the Secret Service said, I'm sorry, your names are not on the computer. You don't get in. We were really disappointed. We had our paperwork and everything. They said, you're not getting in because your name's not on. And so we went over and just started praying. And then Sam Brownback walked up and he said, what are you guys doing? I said, well, we're praying because we can't get in. He goes, I'm an ambassador. At this point now, he's the ambassador for religious freedom. And he said, I'm an ambassador and I can't get in. So he joined us, the three of us, and we're just standing there, we're praying. And I'm not kidding. In 3 minutes, Secret Service walked over and said, all 3 of your names just appeared on the computer. You get to go in. And there was a long line of people. I said, do they get to go in? They said, nope, just you guys. And I came out 4 hours later. The line was down this way and down the block. I went up to the same Secret Service agent. I said, anybody else get in today? He said, nope, just you three. God answered the prayer. And it was effective. I'll tell you this too. I was in the White House last, August, July or August. And it was right after the first assassination attempt of President Trump. And I made it a point to go up to every Secret Service agent I saw, put out my hand. I thanked them for their service. I said, hey, what happened in Pennsylvania? It was unfortunate, but you all are getting a bad rap from something that happened way over here. And I know you're assigned here. You're assigned to President Joe Biden. But I just want to thank you for your service. And they were so kind and smiles. And some of them let me pray for them and talk about the Lord with them. And, you know, sometimes it's just being nice. Just being nice to somebody who has influence with public servants in the political realm. And so it's kind of what I do and kind of hang out. And so I got invited through a strange set of circumstances to meet with former Vice President Pence right here in Omaha. And it was after all that ordeal that happened on January 6th of that year. And I let it be known that I was invited out. And not only was I invited to just meet with him, I got 5 minutes with him. I thought, this is great. 5 more minutes. I had the opportunity in his office earlier, but, you know, and you would not believe the criticism I got. People telling me all sorts of things. Tell him how he was wrong, tell him this, tell him that. I said, it's not my job, not what I do. I encourage people. Well, you need to tell him this, you need to tell him that. I said, no. That's not what I do. Again, I don't deal with issues, bills, about how they're voting, what their record is, what they're standing on, what they're not standing on. My job is to encourage. And I told the people who criticized me, I said, if you want to try to get an appointment with him and you get in and see him, feel free to tell him anything you want. But that's not my job. I was blessed to meet with one of the president's cabinet members in the HUD department. And the man was super tired. We got there like 3 PM, and I just could see weariness on him. We had an hour appointment, and 15 minutes into it, I said, hey, you're just really tired. Let me pray for you. And he agreed, and we prayed, and he just perked right up. He thanked me over and over and over. He said, that's exactly what I needed. Thank you so much. Sometimes it's just a matter of being sensitive. It's just like you would for your friends. You'd be sensitive with your friends, wouldn't you? Well, that's what I'm trying to do. Be sensitive and be kind. Our current mayor is John Ewing here in Omaha, and over and over and over, I knew him when he was the Douglas County Treasurer, and before that when he was on the police force as Assistant Police Chief, and I told him many times, you're going to be my mayor, you're going to be mayor. I kind of prophesied to him, and I encouraged him to run, and he ran, and he is the mayor now, and I'm having a meeting with him next week, and he's been a guest here on the show as well. You know, just having influence. Sharing with people. Congressman Bacon announced that he's not coming back. He's already put that out there, and I told him last October. I called him up. He's my prayer partner on Thursdays, and I called him up and I said, hey, I just feel like from the Lord, this is your last term. You're going to get elected. It's going to be a narrow margin of victory, and then it's going to be your last term. He said, okay, let me think about that. Well, now he comes back and he said, yep, that's what's happening. This is my last term. I've been in there 10 years, and I won't go into all the reasons, but it was like God told me in advance. Just sharing with them. Again, the reason they can receive this is because I built credibility and honesty and authenticity and integrity and all those kind of buzzwords that we like to use that kind of help open the door and show how you can be used. And so, you know, if maybe you're in a small town, maybe you're in an average type city, maybe you're in a major metroplex of millions, I don't know. But you have the opportunity to minister to political leaders and to do something that's different and have influence, and make a difference, and see lives changed. So my encouragement to you is if you're thinking about that you should be involved in prayer, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, in your city, in your state, you know, I know a number of they call them senators here in Nebraska, and I've had the opening prayer for their sessions there, and it's just a fun environment to walk into. Some people will be like apprehensive. I'm not. I walk in with boldness and courage. I'm like, okay, God's with me. We're going to make a difference today. Go to the Capitol. And just been a blessing to be in so many capitals around the United States and pray with believers. Have I prayed with all? No, no way. God hasn't opened all those doors yet. But in the process, I've been to Washington, D.C. now 19 times. And I'm about to take my 20th trip in a couple of months. And it's like every time I go there, I meet the most unique, wonderful, amazing people. On a recent trip there, and see things I didn't even know existed. But on a recent trip, I got to pray with the Virginia Fox, Congresswoman from North Carolina, another one from Montana, another one from South Carolina, another one from Tennessee, and so on the list goes. It's like just God opens the doors and creates an environment. So my conclusion is, if you're thinking about how you can change your city, because we started with transforming, what does a transformed city look like? Well, part of that transformation is having influence in the government, having influence with your police chief, your fire chief, your deputies, the congressman, the governor, the lieutenant governor. I'm not going in order. You get it. Changing lives, one person at a time. It's saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you change a city? One person at a time. So that's my directional challenge to you today as part of Directions TV is you can truly make a difference. It says in Joshua, be strong and be courageous. Be very strong, be very courageous. Some of you are thinking, I don't know if I could do that. I'm kind of timid. I'm kind of fearful. God is not giving you a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. You have a good mind. You can think this through and you can figure it out. Even if you're not part of an organization like I was, you can still go in and make a difference. So I just thank you so much for tuning in today, for listening. Hope it was beneficial to you. Encourage you to watch the shows, share it with other people. Bless KPAO here in Omaha for their service of putting it out there, and go out and make a difference. Start with your neighbor, start with your boss, start with your coworker, start with your kids' teachers, whatever, and then have influence. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Directions and Jay West. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.